Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Traci Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe wherever you're catching this episode. And actually, I have to tell you, I've pretty much told you a few times when I've started recording. It is just about 6 a.m. my time. And I have to tell you that the only reason why I'm even functioning at this point, even though I'm definitely a morning person, but I'm not always I'm not as much of a morning person as I used to be. I feel like it takes me more time to get up in the morning, but also that's just generally probably because I'm not getting enough sleep. But I wanted to tell you that what I feel has helped me a lot in just being able to focus in the morning and being able to focus throughout my day and then also get some good sleep is Magic Mind. And I've talked to you about Magic Mind over the course of the last few weeks, is something that really contributes to my mental wealth. And when Magic Mind first reached out, as I shared with you, I had to make sure that I tested its efficacy first because I wasn't like 100% a believer of things like this. But Magic Mind really changed my mind. And so now that I've just taken a sip in front of you, I'll tell you, to me, it kind of tastes like getting a green juice with grapefruit because it has a bit of that like citrusy flavor at the end. And I'll just, again, share that Magic Mind has a 24-hour approach to mental wealth. And I think that's what has really been the key for me. And if you follow me on Instagram, I told you about how there are all of these exogenous compounds, as Magic Mind and their team puts it. And I think there's just a lot of research about some of these things really helping to boost not only your energy, but really your focus, because this is not like an energy thing. This is all about your mental wealth and focus. And it has 55 milligrams of caffeine, which is not a ton. So I'm able to drink it right next to my morning coffee. And so for my listeners, as I've shared, who want to invest in their mental wealth, Magic Mind is offering a 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases. You can use code HUMANHR20 at checkout, and you'll get all of that good stuff, not only in the bottles, but also in the discount, which is really nice. So enjoy your Magic Mind and your contribution to your own mental wealth. All right, so this week we're going to be talking about career growth. And I have to be candid here. I was inspired to talk about this really just in the last 48 hours. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to talk about. Oh my gosh, by the way, I think this is my first solo non-guest episode of 2025. So happy New Year, everyone. It's already February. January is literally the longest month of the year. I'm recording this in January and I feel like I've been in January for 3 months. It's I don't know if it's like a January paradox or what that is, but I'm seeing that all over my friends' social media pages too. It's is this still January? Yeah, it's still January. So here we are in 2025. Thank you so much for continuing to listen and for being a part of this podcast community, if you will. I don't even think I said community correctly there, but that's, hey, happy 2025. That's the way things are going these days. So I was inspired in the last 48 hours because of things at work. Now, as you know, if you've been here listening before, I work full-time in an HR job and I have my podcast, which is obviously its own business. And so in my full-time non-small business and my full-time job in a tech company, we've been talking a lot about career growth because it's something, and career planning, I should say, because it's something that's not only important, but also something that's just generally and organically come up within our organization. And I was trying to think back, have I talked about career growth? Have I talked about career planning on the podcast? And while I don't have the best memory, which is something that I've had to kind of be honest with myself about, I really think that it's kind of just gotten worse since I've become a mom, but it is what it is. I'm will I remember anything in 10 years? I don't know. I just really can't remember if I've ever talked about career growth. And I was like, am I going to go back through 200 episodes? No, I'm just going to talk about it now because the reality is that even if I've talked about it in every single episode, it's a new year, it's a new day, and things change. And I know for sure that I've never talked about some elements of career growth that I have learned just by being an employee and by listening to really good leaders around me and by being coached by really good leaders around me. So I want to share the wealth because we don't gatekeep here. If we learn something and we grow from something, we're sharing it. So I just want to take a moment to be candid with all of you. I have struggled a little bit to find some motivation in my podcasting, which is a first for me because I am really passionate about this platform. I'm really passionate about my podcast. I'm really passionate about giving all of you insights and tips and things to consider and maybe new skills or a new way of thinking about something. I don't know, but I think, what I said in the last few weeks, even like with talking through Magic Mind, it's real. Like I have a lot on my plate and I've been thinking like, how do I keep my motivation high? And I've realized that with my podcasts, I think in like the last I would say maybe year and a half, I just kind of started to like pull back a little bit because of things going on personally and in the world. I'm, as you know, I'm Jewish. There's just been like a lot that has weighed heavily on me as a Jewish woman, and so I've realized I had to just be honest and I had to be authentic because I've always been that way on my podcast, and so that's me opening up vulnerability. Love that. And actually, today is probably the first day in maybe 6 months or so where I was like, yes, I'm waking up at 5:30. I'm getting like a little bit of makeup on, even though you can't tell, and I'm going for it. And I feel really good about that. And I think, honestly, I think that what did that for me was knowing that I was going to come here and share a little bit more about how I've been feeling and just some of the things that I've been dealing with personally as a Jewish woman. Like it's been really rough. It's just been really rough. And so with that, I wanted to, I'm glad I shared. Maybe I'll share more in the future. I don't know. A big part of why I didn't share was because I was pregnant like on October 7th, and I was just trying to protect my peace because that was an extremely just like traumatic start to things, and I was like just protecting myself. And now here, like 450 plus days later, I'm still trying to protect my peace, and I'm also trying not to open myself up too much vulnerably. So maybe I'll share more in the future, but I do appreciate you listening to my little vulnerable rant. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you are seeing all my facial expressions that go along with that. It's not easy to be vulnerable, but I think, this is my podcast and I can do whatever the hell I want to do. Now I have to put an explicit marker there because I said hell. Now I've said it twice. Hell, hell, hell. 4 times, 5 times? Whatever. No counting before 6 a.m. All right, let's get into career growth. So as I said, in the last 48 hours, I was like, this is what we have to talk about. So I want to share a few things that are really important when it comes to career growth. And I want to start by saying, first of all, look at how dead my plant is behind me. It's bad. I have to bring it back to my in-laws. It gets no sun here, and I have a green thumb. This is not good. Not good vibes for 2025. All right, career growth. So I wanted to first share that, in my opinion, career growth and maybe it's not even that. Our development is, on the majority, something that we own as individuals. This is not something that I've created for myself. I had a leader when I worked at Target who sat me down and was not in HR. And I don't even know that I was in HR yet. I wasn't. He sat me down because I was like, I want to do more. Like, how do I do more? As a very ambitious person. And he was like, listen, our development is our own. We own every stage of our development. Shout out to Kevin Bryant. I don't even know that he remembers me, but he was like a district manager for the particular target district that I was in, the store that I was in. And he was a fabulous leader, like fabulous. And I'm sure he still is. And he has worked for some really big names since leaving Target. But I vividly remember we sat down in like the Starbucks cafe area and he told me that. And I was like, I don't know, 23, 22 or 23. I had just finished college. I was like, yeah, he's right. I own every part of my own development. If I want to do more, I can do more. If I want to go beyond the scope of my role, I can go beyond the scope of my role. If I want to be collaborative and I want to help people achieve their own goals, I can do that. I don't have to wait for my manager to say, hey, here's like this little project so you can do more. Like I didn't have to do that. And actually it was great feedback and great advice because I don't like waiting for people. I am sometimes I can be a bulldozer. And this is something I know about myself and I rein in when I need to. But in moments like that, it's really important to know exactly what your strengths are. Like if you know that you can get after something, then like what's stopping you? And so Kevin really kind of changed my life with that advice. And maybe I should reach out and tell him that. Maybe I should send him a little clip of this podcast once it's done. But I wanted to share that in the very beginning of this conversation because that is going to set the stage for everything that we talk about. So often, I'm sure that we all have said it ourselves, but so often employees, and I'm sure you've heard this from your employees, will say, my manager has not talked to me about my development. My manager has not talked to me about my career options. And frankly, I don't really think that it's the manager who comes to the employee and says, here are all of the things that you're going to do more of or less of in order to hit the next stage of your career. Like it just doesn't really happen that way. Maybe it does. And sometimes it might. And that's great. But it doesn't usually come first. Usually it's the employee or the person demonstrating that they are ready for more, that they've worked on improving opportunities or developing their skills or gaining more exposure and things like that, that sets them apart maybe from other people or shows their readiness for the next thing. Certainly, managers have an influence over like the amount of exposure that people have in an organization, like how someone is painted, like what light they're painted in to other leaders or an executive team. Definitely, like managers obviously have an influence on this, but development is our own. And once we like take ownership of that, people want to control everything. If I could control everything, I would love that, but I can't. But the one thing that I can control is my own development, right? So this is like, to me, the key to unlocking that next chapter for people. And for you as a leader or as an HR leader, maybe you're a people manager as well, people are going to come to you and say like, I want more. I want to do more. I want to get promoted. And they're just looking for you to solve their problems. And that's another thing. There's nothing more than I hate than that. Like you have to be the person solving the problem in this case, right? Like if the challenge is that you haven't been promoted and you want to be, why are you going to ask your manager to solve that for you? You have to ask your manager, this is my goal. What are some things that I need to focus on to get there? Because I'm focusing on this, I'm doing that, I'm working with this person. How do I do a better job? Or what can I do? Or am I doing that already? Because that's my goal. And maybe you even say, hey, I don't actually know what I want next, but I know that my like North Star, like the thing that I want most is to be in this title or in this role or managing this number of people. Then like your manager can help you and support you in guiding you in the right direction. But asking someone to solve all your problems is like not it. So I hope that maybe that inspires you a little bit about your own career. Like take it on. This is something you can fully control. Like I said, don't we all like love to control things, or is it just me? But if this is something you can control, then just do that. So first and foremost, now we understand a little bit more about how we can set the stage for ourselves and also how we can set the stage and be very candid with people who come to us with that type of mentality or with those types of things. Now, obviously, career growth matters a lot. It's also more than just this vertical movement, meaning like promotions. There's skill building, there's personal fulfillment that's part of this. And of course, aligning what we do with our purpose or what we believe our purpose is in that moment. Because sometimes our purposes change, right? We think, yeah, I want to do X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm really fulfilled by. And then maybe you have a life change, or you have something, I don't know, maybe 10 years goes by and you're like, oh, actually my purpose is totally different now. So that's great. It's totally great. You just have to find the work that aligns with that purpose for you. And of course, as I mentioned, owning your own development is essential. It's essential, and it's especially critical in a fast-paced and like ever-changing work environment. We know that things are changing constantly. And so having that awareness allows us to stop waiting for someone else to unlock these doors for us. Like if you're doing all of these things and you're owning your own development and there isn't that vertical opportunity, that might be just the reality of the organization in present tense. But there's a whole world out there. If you're looking for more, go find it. I think leaders who are, white knuckling their team, meaning like just holding on so much that they're just like more petrified about the idea of someone leaving than them getting what they need out of their careers. They just haven't put themselves in that person's shoes yet. It's just a matter of time before leaders have that understanding that it's okay if someone leaves if their goal is to get something else in that moment. Like the best thing that we can do as leaders is prepare people, whether it's for the organization that they're in or for another organization. And actually a colleague of mine put it quite well that he had a leader tell him that the best thing that he could do is, I'm really paraphrasing here, I already told you how my memory works, that the best thing that he could do for my colleague, again, this is not in a current work situation, but this was from the past. The best thing that he could do for him was to prepare him to develop his skills or to support him in developing his skills, to give him the help and support that he needed and the guidance so that he could be ready for the next thing, even if it's outside of that organization. Now that's the type of leader that someone strives to work for, right? Because actually, and my colleague said it perfectly, what happens then it also builds a lot of loyalty to that leader, because you're like, oh yeah, I can do more than what is in front of me or what's in this organization now, but maybe I don't want to. Maybe I want to continue to work for this leader because they care about me and they care about my development. So that is also a really important part of this, is like, if you're a leader or you're working with people leaders, reminding them it's okay. And actually my colleague said it perfectly. It's like, if you love them, let them go. It's okay. It's okay if they leave. Do we want retention? 100%. But if they're not happy and they don't feel fulfilled and their work is not aligning with their purpose, they're not going to be a ton of fun to work around, frankly. And they're not going to be very motivated. Like, let people find whatever it is that they need. And you know what? Sometimes they come back because they're like, ooh, the grass is not much greener over there, which is true. I mean, a lot of people, I experienced that when I left one retail job for the next. I was like, yeah, I don't like this, right? Like when I only worked for 3 months. You can go back. I think that episode is from 2022. You can go back if you want to hear about that. Some juicy stuff there. Anyway, so we know why career growth matters. And I've talked a lot already about taking ownership of your growth. This is really a mindset shift. Your career is your responsibility. So don't wait for anyone else to guide your career. Take full ownership, take control, take the reins. No one's going to stop you. In fact, your leader is probably going to be much more impressed and in a way probably a little bit relieved, because once you become a manager, you're doing your own job and you're managing people, and it's really hard. And managers are best equipped for supporting their employees to achieve their goals by working collaboratively on their career development. Managers are not just because someone's a manager doesn't mean that they're an expert in identifying skill gaps or identifying areas of opportunity for someone. Sometimes it takes a really self-aware employee to say, hey, leader, I am way too controlling and I need to let other people do things as the project owners rather than me taking on that. You could tell that this is something that I have learned about myself. Rather than taking on everything, I need to let people, I need to delegate. I need to let other people take control so that I can give them the opportunity to really prove themselves and do a great job. And then sometimes it's the leader who's like, yeah, great idea. Let's focus on that. And look, just because someone's a leader does not mean that they have the answers to everything. So self-awareness, taking a moment to shift your mindset is really important. And that self-awareness, like many people are not self-aware. As much as you can be, it's really important. And if you think you're self-aware, but people are telling you that you're not, I have news for you. You are not self-aware. Like people will tell you if you're self-aware. And so if you're working on, or if you want to work on your self-awareness, a great first step is to take feedback partners who are going to be really honest and candid with you. If you have siblings, those are your first feedback partners in life because they'll tell you everything about yourself without really caring about how it feels. And probably our parents too, but find someone who's going to tell you genuinely and candidly where your gaps are and what you're doing really well. And then, of course, think about your career vision. Where do you want to be in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, maybe more than that? And how does that align with your life goals? I can tell you, before I became a mom, I was like, I want to run everything. And then I became a mom and I was like, maybe I'll want to run everything later on in life because I have my own stuff. Like I have 2 kids now. I have to like focus on them and I want to focus on them and I want to be, present and available. And like, that's just not my career goal today. My career goal now is to just like continue to expand horizontally on my skills. So we talked about like this vertical career development, which is like promotions and new roles and more team and things like that. But horizontal career growth is like taking on more skills, taking on more opportunities that expand our skills, expand our knowledge. And that I think is actually way more integral to our being able to achieve vertical growth than anything else. Like you have to grow horizontally before you can grow vertically, if you ask me. And so when you think about that, of course, there's this element of needing to seek feedback regularly, upskilling, which is really, leveling up your skills, whether it's through courses or certifications. For us in HR, there are obviously a number of certifications we could pursue. Maybe you go for an additional degree or a degree if you don't have one. On the job learning for future proofing, all of these things are actually also ways that you can ask your leader for support. Maybe you can ask for reimbursement from work for these courses or these additional learning opportunities for professional development. And again, this horizontal aspect, the lateral moves are super important. Sometimes it's not upward. So explore those cross-functional opportunities to diversify your skills and expand your knowledge. And, I always like to talk about stretch assignments too. Like this is something where like maybe you just say, hey, I want to help with this really challenging project and it's outside of my comfort zone and it's really going to stretch me. And again, this is where, think about the elasticity in your career, in your professional development. Super important. Also, I'll say that, kind of similarly to owning your own development and owning your own career growth is also advocating for yourself. I'm sure that you've heard this a million times. I know I've talked about this before on the podcast, but you're kind of your own cheerleader and you have to be. You have to, this is the whole thing about owning your own development is like knowing your potential and going after it and advocating for yourself. It's the same reason why when people, are offered a salary and they don't negotiate that salary, they miss out. They miss out on potentially more dollars. You have to advocate for yourself. When people negotiate, they are advocating for themselves. When they, aren't saying yes to everything, and maybe they're taking a more critical approach to things, not every time maybe, but just in general, they're advocating for themselves. You have to know your own value. I mean, understanding your worth, also understanding your worth relative to the market. This is where, again, negotiating salaries, women more often than not are not negotiating their salaries. And this is potentially one of the factors related to some gaps in pay. Sometimes I will tell you, I have seen women not negotiate. Like, maybe I'm offering a rate. This is especially in the past. It's not happening as much now, I think, with Gen Z really being advocates for themselves. But just, you know, seeing someone, more often than not, again, women who just say thank you. But maybe there's more in there for you, right? And actually, you work for a great organization when your leader is like, you know what, I think we need to bump them up. They didn't negotiate, and I think we could do a little bit better. That's when you know you're at the right organization. And that has I have seen that in recent years. So, anyway, be that type of leader, right? Be the person that's like, okay, this person didn't advocate for themselves, so I'm going to advocate for them. But advocate for yourself. It's so important. Like, no one else is going to do it, frankly. Not because they don't care, but because they're not thinking about you. Everyone's just thinking about themselves, which is okay. It's just human behavior. And then also set some boundaries, just as much as, like, you know, if you're anything like me, you're going to think, okay, abundance mindset. Like, I want to grow. I'm going to do as much as humanly possible. But that's not always the answer. Learn from some of them. I won't call them mistakes, but learn from some of my experiences. I used to be, all about taking on as much as possible. I can't do that anymore. And that doesn't actually mean that I am not contributing as much value as before. My contribution to value and value has not shifted because I'm unable to do as much, or that I'm not able to, offer as much support as I used to, because I set boundaries now. And that this is where I'm getting at. Setting those boundaries it is a huge part of it, because owning your own development does not mean that you have to say yes to everything. And this is a very vital lesson that I have learned probably in the last year, because I really thought that all of my value was placed in doing as much as my body could take, basically, and saying yes to everything and never saying no and all this. And my leader was like, no, like, you add value whether you're involved in something or not, because you contribute in other ways. And that was a really important lesson for me to learn, because otherwise I would feel like I'm failing every day because I'm not saying yes to everything, right? But you physically cannot say yes to everything. And yeah, when I was in my early 20s, I was saying yes to everything, but I was working crazy hours and I was like totally burnt out. So don't do that. It's okay to have boundaries. And I feel like the Gen Z listeners are like, yeah, duh, Traci, I'm going to have boundaries. I'm not going to work 100 hours a week when I don't have to. So yeah, be like Gen Z. Um, Also, I would say mentorship is really important too. If you can find someone to mentor you, similarly to your feedback partners, but a mentor is really going to help guide you. And maybe they've gone through it before. Maybe they're in a job that you really one day want to be in, or maybe it's a job that you want to learn more about. Mentors are really, really helpful in this type of situation. And then finally, when you again think about how you align your own purpose, your personal purpose or your professional purpose with the work that you're doing. Find the meaning in your work and really just like ensure that your career and your life goals are aligned, because you don't want to have to be in a situation where you're like picking between one or the other. You really should feel like you're kind of moving along, whether it's horizontally or vertically, or both, in a way where it's a symbiotic situation. And of course, as we know, work-life harmony is really important to avoiding burnout. And, finding career growth and developing is not going to happen overnight. You have to, it's kind of like Rome. It wasn't built in a day. You have to really nourish your development, nourish your career growth. And, it's a lot to own something for ourselves, but there's a lot of there's a lot of inspiration, I think, and motivation that can be found in saying, yeah, I control my own destiny. I'm going to advocate for myself. I control my career. And you know what, whether that's something in my present organization or something in a future organization, that's okay. I'm just going to continue to focus on upskilling and learning as much as possible and finding mentors and, contributing where I can. Like that's the magic sauce, right? So certainly I would encourage you to just think about your career growth as a marathon rather than a sprint. It's a longer process and something that you'll always be thinking about. You could be super happy in your role and you might still think, okay, well, what's next? Or maybe it's not even what's next. Maybe it's what's more. Like, what more can I do to upskill? What more can I do to contribute positively to my team, to my organization? What more can I do personally to have a better impact at work? Like I talk to my coworkers all the time about the importance of doing things for ourselves outside of work in order to be at 100% inside of work. Because this is a very much kind of like an allegory for filling up a car with gas or recharging your electric vehicle, right? Like the lower the fuel tank, or I should say fuel gauge, the lower the charge on a car, the harder it is going to be on the system, right? Like the car is not running at 100%. Or if you're in an electric vehicle, don't charge your battery to 100%. But still, I digress. You get what I'm saying? When you do things that help to fill your tank, like for me, my podcast has always filled my tank. And being with my kids fills my tank. Being with my husband fills my tank. So when you do things that fill your tank, that put gas back into the car, you will then take that full tank, go to work, be more productive, be a little bit happier, feel more motivated and engaged. That all matters. And especially coming off of the recent episode where we talked about 20% of employees feeling lonely at work, we really have a huge opportunity here to look inward. How do we do more for ourselves so that we're not part of that 20%? So we're not part of a group of people who are waiting for someone else to promote us or to grow us or develop us. Like this is on us. And certainly organizations obviously have to create those opportunities too. But our development is our own. So if it's not at the organization that you're at, it's going to be somewhere else. And you know what? Some organizations are really candid about like, hey, we don't have this upward movement for you yet, but let's get you ready for when that moment happens. And that's a really wonderful organization to be at because the transparency is really important and they're still investing in you. And so with that, our career paths, it's really a career journey. It's going to take time. It's not a straight path. It's not a straight upward path. And there's just so much opportunity out there for you. So don't forget, the best investment to make is to invest in yourself. And if we take that and we run with it, it's totally applicable in probably every life situation. Like how you invest in yourself monetarily, like, paying yourself first, as they say. And in this case, investing in your own skills and your own development and really focusing on what your value is and advocating for yourself. So with that, I hope that you walk away feeling a little bit more in control of your destiny and in control of your life, because you certainly have a lot of control. It's all within your own reach. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Tons of amazing episodes for you this year. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, please let me know. And I have already gotten a ton of comments and DMs, like asking if I'm going to talk about DE&I and the recent rollbacks and things like that and revocations. And the answer is yes. I am going to bring on a past guest to help me do that. But we are going to talk about it. It's probably going to be a February episode. So just stay tuned for that. And
see where the wind blows, as they say. But yeah, if you think of any topics that you'd really like to hear me touch on, please just DM me on Instagram, hrtraci, or you can email me, contact@hrtraci.com. And I look forward to a very bright rest of 2025, hopefully. All right. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to this show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.